shocking testimony from Alec Murdaugh's former paralegal. Her name is Annette Griswold. This is her. She detailed the steps that Murdaugh took to reroute settlement disbursements that were coming in to the law firm. She also recalled how Murdaugh's demeanor changed after the 2019 boat crash involving his late son, Paul. We want to bring in now a very special guest joining us from Columbia, South Carolina. He's a practicing criminal defense attorney and a civil attorney, Joe McCullough. He also represents Connor Cook. That young man's name should sound familiar to you if you've been following this case, because he was involved in that 2019 boat crash with Paul Murdaugh. Joe, great to have you on the program this morning. Thank you so much for making time for us. I've gotten many questions about who you are. Many people in the gallery, they spot you every day in your suit in the same area in the gallery taking notes. We always like to say on this show, or at least I like to say, we don't have a horse in the race with the trials that we broadcast on Court TV. We call balls and strikes. And here you do have a big horse in this race. What are you looking for as you watch the case day in and day out, please, Joe?
Well, Julie, I'm there to protect my client's interests, Connor Cook. That issue of the boat accident has been mentioned. His phone records were put in as a possible suspect on the front end of this. So obviously I'm there on my client's behalf. I'm also there as I guess a student of the law. I teach at the law school. This is a fascinating trial. It has everything. Now we got bomb threats, and today I think we'll probably have a locust storm or something biblical. You never know, but I'm there observing things and frankly, finding the proceedings very interesting. But I'm taking a lot of notes because that helps me stay awake during the down periods. Unfortunately, the jury's not getting, they're not permitted to take notes. So it's a fascinating experience watching lawyers try this case.
We've gotten some questions about that, Joe, with you being licensed in South Carolina. Is that something that is the law, or is this just this judge's discretion in his decision?
Totally discretionary. Some judges do, some don't. This judge, you know, if a juror were to ask, can we take notes, I don't know what the judge would do. It certainly is not prohibited.
Right. Let's get into some of the nitty-gritty and the testimony that has so many of, we like to call them our courties, our viewers who watch day in and day out. They are gripped by this case. Yesterday, Annette Griswold dropping some big bombs. She's the paralegal that used to work with Alec Murdaugh. Tell us what you were thinking as you were watching her on the stand, please, Joe.
I've been fascinated by the procession of witnesses who profess to have this deep, abiding affection for the Murdaughs and for Alec Murdaugh, who then seem quite willing to deliver up bombshells. You know, these people obviously have to be torn in terms of loyalties. I'm watching this trial because I have a deep and abiding belief in the presumption of innocence, and of course that's not the prosecution's job to direct their attention to that in particular. They are trying to overcome that presumption.
Sure. You know, and as they're doing that, Joe, you're able to see the jury. Our viewers are not. We're not able to get a look at them. And for a good reason, our cameras aren't able to show them. What are you picking up on as you're watching them?
Well, I was thinking about that this morning, and it occurred to me that our society is now imbued by one of our big retailers with this concept of fulfillment. You know that phrase. And I think the problem for the prosecution is that this jury at alternate times seems to be attentive, and they seem to be bored, they seem to be frustrated. And I think that, you know, if the prosecution does not tie together all these loose ends, they're going to have a fulfillment problem in a very real sense with this jury.
Certainly. Do you get the sense that the jury's leaning one way or the other based on anything you've seen so far?
No, I mean, trials are kind of things move this way and that way. Somebody has a big day, somebody puts in a zinger. It's up to the opposing side, the opponent, to deal with that as soon as it makes sense to do so. So, I mean, you can't read too much into the jury at this point. We're not even halfway through.
Right, and that's a great point. I'm sure you've found this throughout your career, your years of practice, Joe. You never know what a jury is going to do. Sometimes those jurors look like they're with you. They may be nodding along and making you feel like, they're on my side, and then they come back with a verdict that is not what you expected. So we'll stand by, as we like to say, the jury is still out, so to speak. Joe, tell me, as we were watching Alec Murdaugh's paralegal yesterday, and the theme that was thread through all the questioning and her answers was really his manipulation. And so I couldn't wait to talk to you this morning about the manipulation that you and your client, Connor Cook, perhaps saw going on with that boat crash. Would you take us back to that time? Because there's been reporting about Alec Murdaugh and his dad going to the hospital where all of these young folks were, and Alec going room to room, essentially leaning on these kids, especially your client, to try to take responsibility.
Well, Julie, I am ethically prohibited from talking about that part of my case. I'm able to talk to you about this murder case, for the obvious reason I'm not involved in it. I have I don't know whether he is guilty or not. I'm watching our system play out, but I can't talk about that. What my clients believed and what occurred has been well documented out there in our lawsuit and in others' statements of hospital staff and so forth. But I can't really say, I can't have an opinion on your show, and I'm sorry about that, but I'm sure you understand.
No, don't be sorry. That is absolutely fair enough. We certainly understand, and you are abiding by the rules of professional responsibility. We like that. Not all lawyers do, so understood, Joe. How about this question? For folks wondering how Connor is doing, he's been through a lot of trauma. I mean, just the boat crash, that is a traumatic event in and of itself. Paul was his good friend, as I understand it. Paul, taken from this earth in such a heinous fashion, that is another trauma to anybody who might have known him, loved him. How is Connor doing today?
I think my Cooks, because there's the Anthony Cook family as well, another victim of the boat accident, I think my Cooks have pretty much unplugged the television. They want to see an end to this whole case, not only this criminal case, which is terrible, but the civil cases as well. They're very much, and Connor goes to work at 5 a.m. every morning to work construction, and I think he just tries to ignore this and march through his days without this conversation coming up. But of course, in a community like Hampton, it inevitably does.
Right. Joe, we have a clip we want to play here. This is the 911 call that was placed when the boat crash happened. Let's listen together now.
We're in a boat crash on Archer Street.
Whereabouts on Archer Street?
In Archer Street, the only bridge on Archer Street.
Archer Street?
Archer's Creek.
Archer's Creek. Archer's Creek. Is it? Okay. What's going on?
It's by Paris Island.
Right. What's going on?
We're in a boat crash.
You know what kind of a?
A boat crash.
A boat? Did you say a boat crash?
A boat crash.
Okay, so you're at the dock? Hello, are you at the dock?
No, we just crashed in a boat.
Okay, are you in the water or are you?
We're in the boat.
Okay.
We have someone missing.
And just to be clear, that is your client Connor's voice on that call. Just a devastating situation, as I said, for all of these children losing their friend, Mallory Beach. We know that her family also has a lawsuit pending. And we heard from that family attorney as one of the witnesses, Mark Tinsley. Joe, I have to say, many of our viewers have said he was one of their favorite witnesses on the stand. I know as a lawyer watching him, he was one of my favorite witnesses to watch. Tell me what you were thinking when he took the stand and was dropping some big bombs.
I love Mark. We work closely on our cases. They're moving somewhat parallel. He's a little bit ahead of me in terms of chronology and time. But Mark is a heck of a lawyer. He's smart, he's tough, he's one of those people on the witness stand who's not shakeable. And I thought that Phil Barber, the defense lawyer who had the tough duty of trying to cross-examine him, did as good as he could with a guy that is a professional. Mark is a tough adversary. He has been ferocious and aggressive throughout this litigation. I don't know whether he's coming back to testify. We'll see, but...
Oh, why do you say that, Joe? Because this was done outside the presence of the jury, so everyone's clear. It's hard to make that delineation because we can't see the jury with what we show on court TV, but he was one of those witnesses proffered by the state in trying to get that prior bad act evidence about the financial crimes in. Why do you say you don't know if he'll be back, please?
Well, I think there is a point where the point has been made by the prosecution that Alec Murdaugh is a thief and stole from his partner, stole from his clients, and that point is of limited, was permitted to be admitted for limited reasons. And I think the more the prosecution piles on redundant witnesses making the same point, you can't keep hitting that nail without creating a problem down the road if an appeal becomes necessary. So I think they're assessing how much longer they're going to drag this case out, and dragging it out with more witnesses like Mark Tinsley. Even though he's a great and very entertaining witness, it may have diminishing returns for the prosecution.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, Joe, because you're right. You know, there could be an objection on the basis of this being cumulative, to your point. Right. If all of these witnesses are saying the exact same thing, that's prohibited under the rules of evidence. So it's definitely something to watch for. If I'm the state, I might think about moving him to the top of that list, get him up there, get him in, because he was so good. Joe McCullough, before we let you go, anything specifically you are going to be watching for today as we go into the courtroom in just a short time?
Yeah, I mean, after the bomb scare, when we kind of got it back together yesterday, there was still an audio problem. And I think that, again, Phil Barber will be back cross-examining this black box vehicle evidence. And I think could be very interesting. It's either going to be of value in supplementing the timeline the prosecution lives and dies for in a sense in this case, but it could also help the defense, and that's what we need to be watching for.
Definitely. A lot of this evidence does cut both ways, certainly. Attorney Joe McCullough, it's been great having you on the program today. Thank you so much for making time for us.
Good to see you. Thank you.
Take care.